really cool people. So I'm going to pass off the microphone to the Executive Director of the IAWTV, Mr. Sherry Cousins.
Hi everybody, thank you so much for coming for our wonderful panel tonight. Again, if you're one of our registered guests, please come and help yourself to some food. You can sneak back around and get some. For those of you who are not members of the IAWTV, not familiar, I'll just say real quick a little bit about us. But we're the organization of people who are creating and associated with those creating and supporting those who are creating web video and web television and digital entertainment, all the above. And we're really excited because we have a big awards show at CES in January. And we haven't announced the exact number of our submissions, but our submissions period closed Friday, and we got a huge number of submissions, way exceeded last year's, and almost from every imaginable source of web television production, from the studios to independents to the networks, everybody. And it's going to be an amazing show this year. So for all you people interested in web video, keep your eyes out for us. You can find out more about us at IAWTV.org. I have my business cards on the table, at the check-in table. If anybody wants to ask me any questions, you can feel free to contact me. And thank you all so much for coming. So I want to introduce the panels. Merging social media and online storytelling. We've got a wonderful panel today. I'll start out here. The moderator is Tim Street. Tim is a pioneer in web video. He is the creator of the iPad mystery series called Vids. And he is also an esteemed member of the board of the IAWTV. And Emmett Furey is creator of the web series Furey of Solace. And he's amazing. We're glad to have him here. Angelique Toshi, she is the social media maven that we are privileged to have as our social media manager at IAWTV. And Bernie Sue is the co-creator and showrunner for the Lizzie Bennet Diaries, a wonderful web series. It's gotten a lot of acclaim. And last but certainly not least is Betty Fine, who is of the infamous Fine Brothers, Emmy and IAWTV award-winning series Kids React, the co-creator and producer of that series, as well as MyMusic, which is a YouTube channel, and MyMusic Live. So we're so glad that you all could come and hear the brilliant pontifications of this brilliant panel and enjoy. So I'm going to turn it over to Tim. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Sherry, very much. We are so happy to have Sherry on board on the IAWTV, and please, if you're in Vegas for CES, please come check us out at the IAWTV Awards. So, social media, storytelling. How many storytellers do we have here in the audience? I'm curious. Storytellers. Okay, hands down. How many social media people do we have in the audience? How many people do both jobs? Okay, there you go. It's a good thing you guys are here tonight. So first off, we got an introduction on the names and kind of a little bit about the show, what they do. But what I'm curious about is I want each of the folks on the panel to tell us a little bit more about what they're doing. And I also want to know, is there anybody here right now, do you have already coming in, do you have a burning question for this panel? Is there something you came here to learn? That's what I'm wondering. Anyone? What do you guys? I did not point that at that speaker. What are you guys doing here? Nobody has a question? Come on, somebody. Yeah. Not my fault. Yes? Social media quest, is that correct? Yeah, request or quest? Quest, okay. Anyone else? Some question, yes, right here. How often you need to be tweeting and what size? Depending on the size. Okay, those are good. Anyone else? Yes, Frank. If there's only one thing you can do in social media, what would that be? Okay, these are good things to start and think, and how we steer and who we steer for. And looks like we're being upstaged by some different web series. Continuum is up there. So, oh, there's Melanie Murkowski. She's always here in spirit, isn't she? Anyways, okay. So I'm going to pass this down. We have a couple mics to share here. So tell us a little bit about what you're doing and what you're excited about in this storytelling and social media space.
Okay. My web series is called Furey of Solace. It's an immersive transmedia superhero story, and we have about 20 character Twitter accounts, which. For the new launch we did in August, I was playing all of them, and I don't necessarily recommend that. But but what's great about that is you use it not only to engage the audience when they feel like they're interacting with the characters, but you can use it for alternate reality games or ARGs, which are essentially anytime it's sort of a call to action to the fans to directly interact. And sometimes that's in the digital space where they just have to interact with characters and do things online. And sometimes, you can have, and we've done, real world-based ARGs where people actually have to, do stuff in the real world. And that's kind of what we've been doing with the show.
Very cool. Yeah. Can we have the little audio assistant, Mr. Microphone?
Hello? All right. Here, I think if I point it towards this direction, it's not going to do feedback. I do social media as for the IAWTV, as well as I'm on the communication. I'm sorry? Oh, sorry about that. So I do social media for the IAWTV, as well as I'm the communications director for Transmedia LA, which is another great organization in LA that is about using different types of media to help tell stories. And working on some own projects, I've helped out with a couple projects, talking about how to use social media to both market as well as enhance the story. And what I'm really excited about in the space is being able to use all these different tools, and depending on what the character would normally use, as well as where the audience is, developing other outlets that help enhance that storyline and tell further stories, so that you're touching them on multiple levels rather than just solely on one outlet. So that's really what I'm excited about in the space.
All right. And next up, Mr. Bernie Sue.
Hi, my name is Bernie Sue. I am the executive producer and showrunner and co-creator of the Lizzie Bennet Diaries. And what that is I describe it as the YouTube adaptation of Pride and Prejudice, modernized and in first person. It's interactive, it plays across YouTube and several social media accounts. It's where Elizabeth Bennet, the main character, is actually aware that she's in a show and playing out her life in front of us. And I guess what I'm excited about, I like the idea of when you expand your story into these kind of social media destinations, it makes the show feel real. And I think we've gotten a lot of comments from fans that they thought the show was actually real, and we don't hide behind that. We're not trying to say it's real. We just want to make it feel real. And there have been fans who watched 6 to 10 episodes before they finally realized it was a show, or before they finally realized it was Pride and Prejudice that we were doing, and they just thought that her life was eerily similar. So stuff like that excites me, and I will pass this along to Benny.
Hi, I'm Benny Fine, along with my brother Rafi. We are the Fine Brothers, the creator and showrunners of MyMusic, which is part of the YouTube Original Channels Initiative. There's lots of other things I've made over time, over now 8 years on the internet. MyMusic is a transmedia sitcom. The idea is, how do you take something like a television sitcom, which we just happen to be releasing on YouTube, and expand that into what the future of sitcoms and entertainment can be. And so MyMusic is a mockumentary format about a fictional music production company, but all week long you can actually see what this fictional production company makes. So they reference it on the show, it's part of the narrative of the sitcom, but then throughout the week, you can get your music news from the fictional staff of MyMusic. There's a live music show that you can come and interact live with them. You can ask them questions and they'll reply. For me, I've been waiting for this to happen. I've been doing this for 8 years, and I was doing transmedia before I knew what that word meant 8 years ago. And the first thing we came online with was a trilogy of feature films with action figures. We were creating an entire universe and a world for you to interact with 8 years ago on our website. And it's taken about 7-8 years to get to the point where this actually works. So what excites me is that this is new in new media. This isn't making static, passive content like you've seen online, even to great success for so many years. This is like the next evolution of what entertainment can be, and just how much you can get involved with your audience, because who doesn't want to talk to their favorite sitcom characters in character 24 hours a day? We're doing that right now with our project.
Very cool. So Emmett, I'm curious, how do you get started in this? What are some things, some basic rules for the folks out there that want to know just stuff? Where do you begin?
Well, I would say that when you're crafting this kind of immersive social media experience, you would want to, don't sort of just tack it on or add it in. Like, from the beginning of your storytelling process, make it integral to the whole thing. And at the same time, you have to figure out a way to, you have to understand that only a certain percentage of your audience is going to delve as deeply into the social media experience as you are, making it available. And to that end, you have to find a way to convey the information that you need to convey in an easy way. And for things like that, I'm talking about, like, there's a site called Storify, which lets you kind of create a threaded sort of timeline of different social media, like tweets and Tumblr posts and stuff like that. And I think that serves kind of really two useful purposes. One, it lets people sort of sort through the flotsam and jetsam of other tweets and things that aren't as plot relevant. But also it means, well, ideally the people would be engaged as you're releasing the videos so that they can literally interact with the characters as stuff is happening. I think it's important to make it accessible to people who come to it after the fact and didn't happen to be following it, and I think that's a good way to let people come in and say, you see what you've been doing.
Great. And Angelique, you spend a lot of time in the transmedia world, the SMWLA group. I'm curious, what are some of the things that you've seen other people do that are successful, and what are some of the mistakes that you've seen people do where you're like, oh my God, this is like a no-brainer? And you don't have to mention any names, but kind of give us some ideas.
Well, the whole reason I got excited about the whole transmedia world way back in 2008 is because of Lonely Girl 15. And I really liked how they used all these different...
Let me stop you just for a second. How many people don't know what Lonely Girl 15 is? It's okay. Okay. So Lonely Girl 15 was a web series about a young woman who was video blogging from her bedroom, and she posted on YouTube back in 2006, and a lot of people thought this was a real web series. And then it turned out that it was fiction, and that was a big deal. A lot of people were upset with that. Some people thought it was great. But the story kept going, and we found out all kinds of things, like her parents were in a cult and all kinds of crazy stuff. Please go ahead.
So being able to use all these new different technologies in a way that was not necessarily intended, they were not necessarily intended to be used, really intrigued me. Because I'm one of those people who, if I read a novel, I always wanted to know more. I wanted to know more about the characters. I wanted to know what happened next. I always wanted to delve further into the story. So when that wasn't available, I would make up my own. So being able to watch something and have all that additional content available was really exciting for me. So that's something I think was done really successful. However, they were one of the first tries out of the gate, so they could make a lot of mistakes, but it wasn't as hard to launch a product like that as it is now because it was the first of its kind. I think things like MyMusic and Lizzie Bennet Diaries are being very successful, and I do attribute that to the fact that they had a plan going in. They knew what they wanted to do with this. They planned it out. They didn't just, in the middle of what they were doing, say, oh, what if we retroactively started doing this as a transmedia property? Some things that I think have been slightly less successful are things that don't have plans. They underestimate their audience. They don't listen to where the audience is and what the audience wants. One of the benefits about projects that do use social and are in real time is you can get immediate feedback from your audience and hopefully find ways to incorporate that into your plan going forward. And I think the ones that haven't been successful fail to listen.
Very good. Fail to listen. Interesting words. A lot of times as marketers, we make the mistake of wanting to scream and yell and tell people, hey, check out my cool new whatever. And in social media, we all know that it's cocktail party rules. It doesn't work. Bernie, are you ever tempted to yell and scream about stuff? Do you find yourself fighting any urges in terms of social media storytelling and marketing?
Can you clarify that a little bit?
Sure. If I walked into this room tonight and I held up my business card and I said, hey everybody, check out my great new company, we do X, Y, and Z, nobody here is going to want to talk to me. And the same thing is true in social media. If you start screaming and yelling how great your web series is, or you do something out of character, you're not going to go too far.
I agree. I don't know what you want me to expand on that. You want me to just give examples?
I'm curious if there are ever times where you are resisting the urge to do something that you know from your experience in social media isn't going to work.
Yeah, I mean, like one of the things I think is unique with Emmett, Benny, and my show is that we all have multiple accounts. And so because you have multiple accounts, there's an urge to just blast on all the accounts that a new video is out, that a new whatever is out. And you have to resist that urge because it breaks the authenticity of the world that you've built. So, for example, there are episodes that in our world there's several sisters that Elizabeth has, and so Elizabeth will of course promote the video because she made the video, she uploaded the video, she absolutely would promote the video. But sometimes those other sisters won't promote the video, and they have very powerful followings. They have followers in the thousands, and they could drive potentially a couple hundred views, which would probably, wouldn't hurt. But we want to be authentic to the world that we've built, and we don't have those ancillary accounts promote the videos when we don't feel it feels right.
Very cool. That's perfect. So Benny, you actually grew up and spent some time working in a non-disclosed theme park somewhere in Central Florida that was run by a mouse. People there really mastered the art of show. Have you been able to take any of the lessons that you learned, any of the things that you saw there, whether it was pre-show, show, post-show, or picking up trash outside the attraction, that you've applied to what you're doing right now in web video and social media?
I don't know if I equivocated directly, but I mean, storytelling is storytelling. This is just kind of a new way, and I'd say that the idea of not breaking character is something prevalent at Disney theme parks even, and performance theming is what they would call it. When I worked at the Tower of Terror, I was a bellhop in 1939, and I never broke character no matter what, even when there was a group of girls trying to get me to hang out with them. I would tell them, no, I would say, what is a dance club? I didn't understand it. So, I mean, I'd say that from that perspective, you really should be treating your social media experience like it is your main show. I think that that's something that sometimes gets glossed over. You're just, I'll do this or I'll toss that. You should be treating it as a full, cohesive storytelling experience the same way that you give to your feature film or your web series or whatever it is that you're making. To be like, well, if this is someone's just engaging with the social media, it needs to make sense. And you should let it make sense. So I think being, like he's saying, staying true to who the characters are and telling stories that interweave with your narrative is important. But I wouldn't. You gotta treat it like it's its own piece of content, not just ancillary to your main property.
Now, Benny, you guys have had such great success, and with success comes trolls, and with success also comes people copying what you're doing. How have you dealt with trolls and people that are imitating what you're doing?
Well, I mean, trolls, we've been very much to the stance of you literally ignore the trolls. I think the biggest mistake is ever engaging the trolls. I know some people have personalities that are like, no, I want to directly attack them and get back at them. It's not something that we've ever done in the 8 years we've been online. Though granted, when you do, typically they're your biggest fan and they start cowering like, oh my God, you're talking to me, I'm sorry. But if you respond to a troll, then other trolls see that you responded to that negativity, and it's going to make them want to talk more because they think you're going to engage with them. If you limit it, and even to the point of censorship, evil word, we'll go so far to delete certain things. We let criticism go in, but if someone's death threatening or being completely over the top, you delete it, because then other people will not see it's there and not think to also leave the comment. And that's just for personal branding. In terms of copycats, I think that's a big problem in the world, not just in entertainment. But I mean, copying is everywhere, and it's rampant, and formats get stolen all across the world, and it's something that we have to deal with directly, and it's very difficult to deal with on the internet. There's no regulations, there's no help. You know, someone can just go on YouTube and start doing your identical show, and YouTube will not take the show down because they're a white label and you have to bring them to court. So it's a mess, I would say. In terms of copying in the sense of things like transmedia, I don't view it as copying. Yes, someone could look at something like MyMusic and see all of the different layers of what we're doing, and you're a TV show and you can see, oh my God, why haven't we been doing this? Because that's how I feel about it. Things that we're doing and what Bernie's doing, I feel like, why is everyone not doing this? It's such an important thing to be doing to engage your audience. So yes, they may copy and get the ideas from you, but that's just exciting. That just diversifies the space. And I think when it comes to social media, I want to see more people doing it. I want to see big television doing it, even if it is a copy to a degree of something we might have done. I think it's just going to help legitimize what all of us are doing if more people are doing it. But they should be smart enough to work with some of the people that already are doing it, because they'll be able to get a lot farther if they're working with people that understand it versus trying to just copy somebody else.
Angelique, you had something to add about trolls?
Yes, as I know Tim knows, I actually do social media for a restaurant company as well, that has about 58 franchise locations. So I deal with a lot of haters and a lot of people having negative comments. And anybody in social media, be it entertainment or hospitality or what industry, you're going to deal with that. And it's really about having a very strong customer service background. And anybody that is going to be handling your social media really should understand that you don't, like Benny said, go off on someone just because they don't like what you're doing. And you really just have to take that criticism, thank them possibly, if you can, do it in a way that's not going to provoke more, and let it go from there.
Bernie, have you ever seen anyone roll it in a positive direction?
Rolling?
Bring it into the story?
I mean, there's ways to do it. I mean, I don't think we've done it. Right? We don't really have big trolling. Well, I guess I'll rephrase. So we have a character, Lydia, who's the little sister of Lizzie, who's kind of very promiscuous and loud and social and just very free. And so sometimes you'll have, in the early stages of the show, you had members of the audience who called her names and said, like, why are you being such a slut? That's what they said. So but then they would use something like, they would say, wow, that's say something maybe not so derogatory, and then she would just kind of spin it into her own like world of that was not a criticism, that is a praise. I forgot the exact word. It was not slut. I'm not saying that is, but I'm just saying that there's ways to be creative with it. You can spin it to it. I think one of the things I remember seeing this recently, this is not related to the panel, but like McDonald's did this really cool campaign where they kind of did a documentary where they showcased how they photograph their quarter pounder for their ads, and because someone asked them, why does that look so much better than what you get from the fast food joint, and they said that they admitted that yes, we dress it up, but we use all the same ingredients that we're using. We're not using fake ketchup and fake mustard. It's all real. Whether it's true or not, it's up to you. But it was a really compelling piece, and I thought it would really help take what was technically a criticism of their brand and spin it into like, no, this is part of what we do.
So you can also have a character in your outset that is the type of character that would respond to them, and then you're in character. Like that's
there you go.
So we have one of our characters. The show is based. It's a big ensemble comedy, and it's a music company, and everyone doesn't go by their real name. They go by the genre of music they identify with, and they have a personality that matches. So it's metal, it's indie, it's scene, it's etc. So the metal character is very abrasive, and so sometimes we will reply as metal to someone who insulted it, and he's able to insult back, and everyone loves it because it is in character for that person.
So Emmett, I'm curious. You spend a lot of time in the social media space around the IAWTV folks, and also your family's involved in social media as well. In fact, I've been contacted by family members Has that ever come into any of your stories? And do you ever see comments where you're trying to tell a story and someone you know makes a comment that's kind of out of character?
Well, I assume you're referring to my mom, who has learned to be on social media primarily, I think, I know she's watching right now. Hi, Mom. To help promote my stuff, which is really cool. Like, and she's in her, her 60s, and it's kind of amazing to see her learn that. I haven't really used that directly, but it's cool. It makes me feel good to know that doesn't have to be just for a young audience. Obviously, the older audience can pick up on this stuff and participate if they want to.
So, Benny, when you got started in this, what was the first show that you did, and then when you got to Kids React, how did you see things change in terms of the interaction with social media? And did you see anything along the way where you were like, oh wow, this would be a great story, or we could turn this into a story if only if?
Well, when we started, it was with a trilogy of feature films with action figures that we broke up into 15-minute chunks. And this was in 2004, so there wasn't much going on in a major way, especially with, well, even now long-form content is difficult. But that's part of what MyMusic's starting to prove. We're now at, I think, 230,000 subscribers on the MyMusic channel and 15 million views on essentially a never-ending narrative web series at 6 to 9 minutes every week that then turns into a 30-minute sitcom episode every 6 weeks or 7 weeks that also gets 200,000 views. So we're starting to train our audience to watch longer-form content, and I believe it's ready for it if you have an audience and a fan base, which I think at the core of all of this, you've really got to understand how to build an audience if you're starting out, or all this stuff is irrelevant. Like, I mean, if you're going to just start up and start doing transmedia and nobody's there, and you're just spamming people on Twitter to get yourself followers for your fake characters, I mean, that's not doing anything. And I think that a missing piece for a lot of people is really understanding how to make content that you can build an audience with, that sometimes is not going to be the show that you really want to make, and you've got to make other things to build, which was what we learned being there 8 years ago and finding decent success with a long-form show back then, but even then having to be smart about it, and we'd have to take like little clips from the 15-minute episodes and try to market those clips to get people to come back to watch the long-form episode. And as the web evolved away from the website into more shorter and shorter form content, we started making sketch comedy even though we weren't sketch comedians, and we became sketch comedians because that was working. I'm digressing. But from there, it was all social media. When MySpace first appeared and started becoming a thing when it mattered, we jumped on it. I feel like within the first 2 months MySpace opened, we had fictional accounts for 30 characters on our show back when MySpace first started. So we were very much like seeing what this could be really, really early. And it was working, and it was fun on a small level. As it evolved over time and YouTube really became the place to be, and we had to kind of shift focus over there, we have made, I want to say, something like at least 50 to 60 different shows over the last 8 years, all to various levels of success, but trying to find a format that is going to stick. And Kids React became the format that stuck. We had a lot of popular shows over time. We did very popular Lost parodies at one point. We spoiled movies. We had web series that were very popular. But once we did Kids React, which if you're not familiar, we had a group of kids ages 4 to 14 watching viral videos, like the biggest viral videos, but also general pop culture. It's kind of like, people like to say it's a modern day Kids Say the Darndest Thing. I feel it's a little different than that, but it is essentially that idea. And when that came out in October of 2010, we instantly saw a shift of, okay, this is resonating with people on a much larger level than anything else that we've done before. Partially, I think, because it's very universal content and we're very irreverent comedy guys, and I think that once you go into something that's kids, everyone likes it. But from there, it grew out, and the interaction became so one-to-one, and we had maybe a few 100,000 YouTube subscribers on our main YouTube channel, but that show boosted us up, and now we're at number 30 on the whole site with over 1.8 million subscribers now, mostly due to Kids React, but due to the success of that, all of our other shows, it's just like having a hit show on a TV network. Everything's more successful, MyMusic's more successful, everything's more successful. We've even spun it off. There's spin-offs on the web, and there's Teens React now, and there's Senior Citizens React now, and we're trying to go global with the property. So in its nature, it's not really social media so specifically, because it is just kids watching something, but you think, how do I involve everybody? And the kids ask you, what should they watch next at the end? And we get tens of thousands of comments of what they want to be seen, and so we base our content based off what the audience is telling us they want to see. So that's kind of how we tie it in. So even with really large properties, finding ways to engage is really anything you make, you should be engaging in some way. And if you can't figure out how, you're probably not going to have much success on that big fanatical level without engagement on the internet.
Angelique, I'm curious, what platforms are important?
Well, broadly, I would say, depending on who you want your audience to be, your platform should be where that audience is. So if you're going for an older audience, which, by the way, 35 to 45 female is one of the fastest growing internet audiences, period. If you're looking to hit that market, you're going to want to be on Facebook and... One second. You're going to want to be on Facebook and Facebook and Twitter. If you are trying to hit a teen college student demographic, you're going to want to be on Tumblr because it is very popular for that. If you're looking for a female audience, things like Pinterest. So you really want to know who is your target audience and what social media accounts would they have, and then develop those properties accordingly. Obviously, if you find that this is what I thought my demo was, but it's really this, then I would recommend adding those additional channels because you're going to be able to touch them on so many more different levels.
Bernie, I'm curious for you, what's your percentage, if you don't mind sharing, on different platforms? Where are you seeing traffic? Where are you seeing engagement?
So just views of any kind is what you're asking. So our biggest is YouTube. We designed the show for YouTube. Obviously it's going to be YouTube. Our second, I don't know what the percentage would be, but it'd be Tumblr by far.
Let me stop you there just for a second. How many people here have Tumblr accounts? How many people use their Tumblr accounts? Yeah, that's what I thought. That's interesting. Younger audience?
Yeah, I mean, to say that, I mean, we are tremendous on Tumblr. Like, that is, to have 4 fictional characters on Tumblr all having 10,000 followers and having them all interact with each other, be interactive audiences, it says a lot. And it's just like, our characters are bigger on Tumblr than they are on Twitter, and our characters are pretty big on Twitter, considering they're fictional characters. So third would be Twitter, fourth would be Facebook, and then we kind of dive into other areas. We have a character that has a lookbook account and a Pinterest account. We have a character that has a LinkedIn account. We have a character that has a Pinterest and OkCupid account. We have Spotify. I think it's GetGlue. Like we go pretty deep. And the deeper you get, the more just kind of ancillary and just supportive it is. It's not required for the story, but it's just there for the audience, to reward the audience.
Benny, are you using Instagram for any story?
The issue with Instagram for us is that because we're dealing with all the social media, and at least for the most part it's phone-based, it's very difficult to manage that. Luckily, the lead of our show is a hipster, and since Facebook bought Instagram, we made it very clear that no one can use it. And that way, all the characters that should be using it don't. That's how we worked around it. But so we don't use Instagram. Everything he was saying we pretty much are using. We're really big on Spotify because we're a music show. So every character makes Spotify playlists. And one of our shows that we make every week, we create a Spotify playlist under a theme with the fans. And then you can go and listen to the music we all made together. And we're diversified. We just crossed 200,000 followers of fictional accounts across social media last week. So we launched in April, and that's a number I never thought I'd ever see inside of it to be that huge. It's not all centered on one account, but between the 70-something accounts across everything, it's just past 200,000 for all these fictional characters, including things like inanimate objects. And we even have we've gone so meta that it's a mockumentary show, so the documentary crew filming the mockumentary has a Twitter now. And so you can follow the fourth wall of what the people making the show fictionally think about the characters. But yeah.
Did you ever have a fake girlfriend growing up?
Growing up? No.
Okay, just checking.
Maybe now. There's no time for a real girlfriend.
So, Emmett, I'm curious. Wave a magic wand. If there was something in social media that you could do for your show that doesn't exist right now, the way that Benny back in 2008 was like, oh my God, if I could just X, Y, and Z, and before there was Facebook, before there was Twitter, before YouTube had really taken off. Is there anything that you've thought of that you would like to be doing that you can't do right now?
I wouldn't say anything that is technologically impossible, but I would really like to delve more into alternate reality game stuff and really kick it up a notch and have things where, like, people have to be working in groups and there's actually a time limit and consequences to if the people who are engaged.
Let me stop you for just a second. How many people here, and it's okay if you don't, this is fine, how many people don't know what alternative reality games are, ARGs? Anyone? Got a few, okay. So that's where a game is played online, but it's also in real life. You could be walking down and find a clue for something that pertains to something that's online. So you watch a video online, or you get an email from online, and a lot of it takes a database to put it all together. Recently, there was one done here in LA that was part of Transmedia LA, where you walked the Miracle Mile, and as you walked the Miracle Mile, you did SMSs back to the home base, and you got different clues on where to find stuff. That it was like a scavenger hunt that would lead you someplace. So, sorry about that.
So I just, you walk a fine line because anytime you're having people do something in the real world, anything can happen. So, but I'd really like to see more of that. I think that's kind of
cool. Angela, you spent time in the corporate space as well as the independent filmmaker, transmedia, storytelling space. Are you seeing any places where that merges, where we're seeing brands come in and approaching storytellers to create immersive branded experiences for them?
Yes. I believe you were at the meeting where a Brazilian company called The Alchemist, which is a transmedia company, is having great success down in Brazil, creating branded transmedia social experiences based off of products. And it's really just kind of dipping its toes here, but I think they're the first ones doing something so successful. What was the rest of the question?
Are you seeing the brands come into the space?
I think I am. I think they're slowly coming in, be it the YouTube video web series space or the social. Obviously, they have to be in social in order to survive in today's world, but they're starting to come to the idea of creating content themselves. There is a hotel company that actually has a hospitality channel on YouTube that's a branded web series. And there's other products as well, but that's the one that jumps to my mind. So it is happening, it's slow, and I'm hoping that it becomes more and more prevalent because they own the content because they're creating it, and it's the best way for them to get their name out there.
Bernie?
Well, I mean, we've seen a couple of big examples. Old Spice did it twice, 3 times now. AT&T just did one that that was really a huge, just with all this Hollywood talent, just last month, called Daybreak. I mean, that was a pretty impressive. Whether or not you thought you enjoyed the experience or not, they do a lot of work in that one. I mean, what else is there? Pepsi has done a couple. Usually they're sports stars. It's out there. Car campaign. Was it Scion? I don't know. But I mean, they're there. Like those of you who deal with advertisers, I mean, when I was in advertising 3 years ago as in operations, and we would pitch campaigns, maybe not like so super story driven, but it would be kind of this echo chamber of get them into this echo chamber, which would include a microsite and a couple Twitter accounts and a Facebook account, and then have them all talk to each other and get them in this world and spin around the world and play the game and buy the product ideally at the end. So they're there. It's just I think you just see them in these kind of pocket campaigns. But to see one, of course, like the big one was the Old Spice one that everybody talks about, but that's just the very top, and you see probably hundreds now.
Benny, I'm sorry, Angelique.
Mm.
What? No?
It was actually the Ford Fusion campaign, which they had you sign up on an app on their Facebook, and if you were within the first so many, they would send you a viewfinder, which had steals from the web series that they were doing. I believe one of the guys from Community was in it, and some other big name celebrities, but it was all focused around the car, which hadn't even came out yet. So it was pretty successful, very story driven, and really interesting to see how they did it. And they were mailing physical objects to people, so there was something tangible that the fans and the audience could have and keep at the end.
Benny, I'm curious where you're at right now. What are the things that you would like to see happen, like wave a magic wand in the social media storytelling space? Are there any missing technologies or things that just aren't behaviorally happening the way you would like them to happen?
I mean, I guess I go a little less into social media and more into traditional media. I think that embracement of what a lot of us are doing online is still has a ways to go, and I'd like to see more of reaching across the other side to realize that talent is talent no matter where talent is, and that it isn't so us against them, it's us together.
Let me interrupt you for a second. You said you have like 1.8 million
subscribers on the main YouTube channel, yeah.
Yeah, so like if you were a cable channel, that would be a big deal. You would be making some bank.
Correct. While online, we make a decent living, but we're not making bank. I mean, we have a show that's arguably one of the most successful shows in the history of the internet, and the react shows get 1 million views every single time, but we have never had a sponsor even approach us, ever. Never has happened. So, and it has to do with a lot of different things, of saturation of content, not lack of understanding of what YouTube is. There's even a percentage of brands out there that see how successful it is and don't want to spend the kind of money that we demand because we have such an audience, and they would rather spend 2,000 here and 2,000 there across a bunch of channels that aren't as successful because they just don't trust the viewership. They don't look at it like a television show to be like, well, you know that 1 million people will watch this. You know exactly, we can give you the demo. We can give you the exact everything that you want. You know it's the same people you're targeting, but it's a risk to them. They don't really understand it. They'd rather say, well, if I spend the same amount of money across 10 different videos, and then collectively those 10 videos get almost 1 million views, they feel like that's a safer bet for them, and we've dealt with that for a long time. The more successful we've gotten, the harder it is to work with brands. Part of that is that we're specific, and even all this branded stuff, depending, Old Spice was very successful. Most of the time, no one's watching this stuff anyway, and they're just buying their views, which is a whole other panel. But then at the same time, we're very specific of like, we have an audience, we have a viewership. Like, why should I have to make, I used to talk on panels all the time and tell people who wants to be a successful web creator, and then I'd follow it up with, well, who wants to make commercials to make money? And almost no one raises their hand. And it's like, well, success equals making someone a commercial. Because the brands come to you to make them a promotional thing for them. They don't come to you to just be the sponsor of your show or air their commercial before your video like they would on television. Instead,
but it's such a good show. I have such a great...
Yeah, exactly. It's this organicness that is just missing, and they want you to make it for them. They don't trust it in the same way, and that's why it's important to have standards, and I think it's more important more than ever now as YouTube is funding content to have viewership standards, because you can buy views on YouTube very, very easily now. All those ads you see on YouTube that you can skip after 5 seconds, those views count even though you're watching it as a commercial. It's the equivalent of, American Idol putting their entire show during a commercial break of The Voice and saying that people watched American Idol. And that's rampant across YouTube right now. So I'm always the big standards champion, because I think that the lack of transparency is what makes these things so difficult to execute, even when you attain a level of success that we have.
Do I get to answer the magic wand question?
Yeah, go for it.
So this is going to be a broader one. So what I think limits what we can do is the limitation of technology, and that's always been the thing. And of course our phones can do amazing things right now, truly. But like I go like the speed of the software, and the speed of the tech, and the speed of the connection, and the speed of that whole system limits what you can really accomplish. For example, like GPS is pretty good, but it's you could get it more precise. So if I had a magic wand, and for the sake of storytelling, to have everybody's cell phones be as powerful as Jack Bauer's PDA in 24, there you go. That's what I'd want. Because then you could do a lot with that.
So like the whole world is looking to kill you, but the President of the United States just sneaks out and makes a phone call.
I didn't say that. I said it's just powerful as his PDA.
Okay.
That's a very powerful smartphone that guy has.
Angelique, any magic wand for you? Anything you'd like to see?
This is going to actually be kind of Facebook specific. I would like the Facebook pages to be able to connect any social media to the Facebook pages that you can to a profile page, because that would help make those character pages even more real. Because right now there is very strong distinction between profiles and pages, and if you create a profile for a fictional character, it's actually against Facebook's terms of service. So to do it correctly, it needs to have a page. And you can actually post it to the page and interact in very similar ways that you can as a profile, but it's just not there yet. I can't connect an Instagram to a page, but I can to a profile. I can't easily connect Spotify to a page, but I can to a profile. And while there are third-party apps that let you do this, it's a little bit more, it resides on a tab on the page, not necessarily the profile. So just fuller integration, thank you. That basically thinking of these pages not just as something that brands have, but also as things that can actually tell stories more usefully.
Great. Anyone have a question? Oh, look at that. If you have a question, this is the question area. So come up to the question area, because I have this microphone, and you can just start a line here, and I'll hand you the microphone, and we'll get you to ask the question. Hopefully we won't get feedback.
So I got here a little bit late, and you might have gone over this already, but you were talking about the lack of the availability of advertiser funding for the programming. If you don't have advertiser funding for the programming, how are you funding narrative scripted programming?
So, Benny?
Well, we have advertising. We have advertising.
I mean, the YouTube Partner Program, is a rev share system, based on how many views you get. So there's some revenue, and when you have enough viewership, you can sustain small business growth, depending, and you can be smart about your content. But at the end of the day, when you're starting out, you've got to just do it yourself. Like, it's just the way it is. We all start somewhere, and like, if you're going to do this truly this new independent way versus trying to go through traditional means, then you got to just be, I do not ever recommend spending tons of money to make your giant short film to put on the internet that no one will watch. But you got to be smart about what are you looking for, where are you targeting, what is at your disposal to make that content work for a small budget point that still has really high quality.
Bernie?
I mean, a better analogy that I think a lot of people kind of mislook when you think about web video is they think of it like a movie, which is not the right way. I think you need to think of it like a startup. So when you're a startup, you get some seed money, wherever that comes from, you build a business model, you design this business model, and hopefully, eventually, a revenue stream will come. That could be advertising, that could be merchandising, the combination of all those things. It won't be huge, but it's kind of what I feel that both of our projects are, in a way, are startups rather than movies or TV shows.
Sure. Until you have an audience, you're not going to be able to get advertisers. So what you might want to think about is doing a couple shows where you build an audience, but have in mind how you're going to monetize that. And you might want to try sponsorship. So the difference between sponsorship being that show, it's burned into that show, it's not dynamically inserted into that show. So that might be a different way to do it. Sure. It is a possibility. It's a hard road. I know from personal experience. I did a web series with millions and millions of views. It started out, I did 2 pilot episodes, and nobody understood that I was selling. I didn't have the cash register set up. So when you launch your show, make sure that you put a sign out that says you're open for business for sponsorships. Know what your rates are going to be, know what you're willing to do, and communicate that to your audience. Because if you don't, people aren't going to get it. It took a while. The first episode I did was how to video podcast. The second episode I did was how to give CPR. And there were different places in there where, to me, it seemed very obvious for sponsorship, but it took a lot of behind the scenes. It took me until I was #1 on iTunes and #1 on YouTube until a company approached me and said, hey, would you do sponsorship? And I said, of course, I've been waiting to do this. So you got to build that ahead of time and let them know how to contact you and know what your media kit is. If you don't have a media kit, Google it. And see what it is and put one together. What would
you recommend as an approach to launch the initial series? You know, you talk a lot about the interaction of social media and using different platforms, but that sounds like you've already got an established base. How do you get that initial fan base? And it's a two-part question. You'd mentioned earlier researching in advance before you even start the show, you know, to find out what the audience wants, what kind of feedback you might get. You know, how are you tying those two things in together?
Anyone want to talk about Freddie Wong?
Well, but that's not starting out.
Well, how did he start?
Well, it's to answer both your questions kind of in one swoop. It's identifying your audience and targeting that audience. I'll just use our show's example. Our show is, again, Pride and Prejudice on YouTube. So you can say YouTube, that's young.
I'm going to stop you. I'm going to call you on this. This is a penalty. I'm not a real ref. I'm not an NFL ref, so there could be a problem here.
Call me.
I'm calling you. Get a little help, Mr.
I did have help.
I'm talking about no help, starting from scratch.
But I mean, the thing is that we were built for the long term. We did have help, yes, right? But we also we did something that no one else was doing, as far as I know. Hank's audience wasn't our press push. We had no press push. The press came, and the Jane Austen audience found us and blogged about us and let us go that way. Yes, Hank's audience was big, right? But I can say that fairly that the article that went up that led to the Mashable article, that led to the Time article, was this nice daisy chain of things that drove audience. And that was because we identified something that to give credit, Hank, my partner, identified something that wasn't in the space, that was serving an audience that wasn't being served, and we just did a good job, and that worked.
Angelique?
Well, I was going to try and answer the finding your audience question. So I would say start with looking at who is watching other things or similar things in the space, then look at who their audience is and say, okay, so this is kind of the demographic that we're looking at, and I would honestly, and this is not new media or social media related, I would, especially if you're brand new to the space, have a press release. Do the research of all those blogs that your audience is going to be reading and reach out to them individually. Build those relationships early on, build that following early on so that you can be successful in the future. And it's a lot of work, and it's tedious, and it's a lot of emailing and smoozing, but it's going to help you get that authentic audience that really cares about your product.
Benny?
Going off something I said earlier, you need to be thinking about what is this project, and if you're starting out and the type of thing you're making has no audience on the internet, don't make it. You've got to come out with something first that does have the audience that, like she's talking about, you can have blog outreach, but if there's no blogs that are writing about this anyway, it's not going to do any good. And for us, as we built our audience, we wanted to, again, we were making feature films when we were really young. We came to the internet with feature films, but then had to shift. And it became trying to understand, well, what is working? How can we gain notoriety and build an audience? Which was at first was sketch comedy. And there was a year, every holiday, we made a sketch. And then it almost forced all of the comedy blogs to feature it because it's a holiday. Then it became, even with our Lost thing, Lost has a gigantic fan base online. But how do you expand on that? It's always thinking outside the box of how can I hit the most places when especially now with how much there's so much content out there. Even looking at what Felicia Day has done with the Guild, and when you hear her talk about how she started out, it's very similar philosophy to when we were starting out. She made something that had a giant audience online, gaming, and the idea of gaming. There was an instant way, you know where they are, you know what you can target, and then you can grow from there, and then make the thing you really want once there's an audience. Otherwise, it's extremely difficult to just start from scratch and expect people are just going to care if there's no reason for anyone online to want to watch this, because everyone's not on the internet right now. There's specific types. So I'd be looking at who else is doing something similar, what's working for them, where are they maybe getting featured, and if they're not, where should they be getting featured? And marketing is a huge aspect of that. And for a long time, we were not on top of the site in subscribers, but we'd have a lot of views because we made those relationships with blogs, and we've gotten hundreds of thousands of views off of blogs over the years. And I really would be being very specific and create content with that in mind when you're starting, even if it's not what you really want to do. And obviously make sure it's good, make sure that what you're doing does stand out and has a reason for people to want to watch it.
Very good. Oh, final note there. Partnering with someone who has an audience is another step.
I just had a question about Y2. Okay, the first one. Bernie, you have to do all this social media for all these different characters, or if someone else does it, like...
I'll repeat the question.
What?
Go ahead.
Just wondering, like, the daily, how many hours a day does that take? Do you have a schedule? Do you pre-plan?
Okay. All right, so the question was how many hours, man-hours, it takes to manage all these fictional character accounts, daily, weekly, whatever. It's a lot. I mean, I'm actually curious about Emmett and Benny's answer to this because they have similar campaigns. As far as myself, when we started, there was 2 of us running 10 accounts, I think, and it was it wasn't the point where it took a lot of continuous hours. It was just like always on your mind. It's just like, oh, Lizzie it's 3 o'clock now, so Lizzie's getting out of school, so she should tweet something. Of course, you could schedule tweets with Hootsuite and all that stuff, but you have to be aware of those type of things. And as the show has grown, the characters, the cast has grown, and the accounts have grown. So now there are, I think we split the 20, 30 accounts across 5 people, 2 transmedia producers, myself, and 2 of the writers. I manage pretty much all of them. I think one of the actors does a little bit of work on one of her characters' accounts, but it's hard. And I think I'm getting curious to hear what they say. But I think it's one of those things where is the ROI worth all that time to do it? Are people engaging? Are the fans appreciating it? And are you selling something there? Maybe there is. We're not. We haven't found a way to drive to anything we feel is organic to make money on. But it's just because you can doesn't mean you should, and just because it sounds cool doesn't mean it is. So.
Yeah, I mean, it does take a lot of time, and as I mentioned, I was doing it all myself, and partially that was because it was all in my head, and I felt like I could do it. I decided not to schedule the tweets because there's no way for you to schedule replies that have a threaded kind of discussion, which meant I had to do it in real time. But even beyond that, it's really cool. I know that Bernie has done some of this. You can totally introduce characters via social media before they even appear on screen. And you can foster organic discovery of the characters. Although, as I've been saying, when Twitter started, everything showed up in all your followers. But now, if you send an reply to someone that your followers aren't following, they don't see it in their stream. And it's tough if you want people to organically find other accounts, unless you put a period out front or anything else. But there's a lot of tricks to it. But it's certainly time-consuming.
It's full time. Like it's just like before when I was saying you need to treat your social media like it's its own piece of content, and it's the same thing. Like you can't just toss interns over to just take care of your social media. Like you really need someone that is passionate about it. And it's going to start from the top, which it has been me, and this is a passion of mine for my whole life to do these types of things. And I've been lucky to find another person that is even taking the things that I come up with, and he blows me away. And I'm like thrilled to have someone on the team now that understands this and is doing things that I never even thought of before. So. I would say, I don't know if there's a specific amount of hours, but it's somewhere around 40 or 50 hours a week when you really add it all up between what I do and what the main transmedia writer that also has other things he has to do with the company. But the 2 of us are pretty much doing it all with supplementation from some other people. And we use a combination of Hootsuite because we want to make sure there's a steady amount of posts always going out that are more in the general, and those are all the generic things. And then every day, I mean, there's meetings we have over this and giant spreadsheets to really break down, hey, this is what's going on in the stories. This is the characters that have to talk to each other. And it really is like full conversations every week about what are we going to do in social media? How do we make this? I was just telling Bernie earlier, like an example I can use is for 2 seconds in one of the episodes, one of the characters brings a giant sword out to try to cut a cake. And then his wife stops him. So we were like, okay, well, that's what that character is doing this week. Well, on social media, if you follow Metal on Twitter, you will see that he got this new sword. And he has been cutting things around the office all week, and it's his favorite thing to do, and his wife's Twitter is saying, stop doing that. So then, for those 2 seconds, if you were following them on Twitter, there's a huge extension to the story. Those type of things are impossible to do with that manpower. You need to be sitting there and thinking about it all the time. and coming up with something new and treating it like it's its own character in the story. And we're now at 70 something accounts now, because anything that appears gets an account but not promoted, like Emmett was just talking about. We specifically don't purposely. We want to create this vast universe that's so real that the characters might not tweet the random pet dog that somebody has, but the pet dog has an account that is findable if you happen to be searching through other people's accounts. But we like this to create, I would love for someone to find something that no one found but that one person in a year and end up emailing me to say, did anyone else find this? And I'd be like, no, you were the only one. And we have like a dozen things that I don't think anyone will ever find that are just there.
And the studio bean counters would love that.
So my question is, for the live action shoots that you guys actually do, the productions, what kind of budgets do you actually have to do like an individual episode? And the way that you break up the spend between the cost of the production and then the cost of the marketing?
Well, marketing is zero. There is no money spent on marketing, at least on our side. We do all the marketing ourselves with our own blog outreach, and again, that's where, you know, we're dabbling. We might bring a PR person in. That's something we might think about doing to try to get some articles written, but in terms of like organic marketing and press, we do that ourselves. Usually if you're going to go to somebody that's going to get your views, your show seen, they're just going to buy the views, which is not what we're interested in doing, and a lot of marketing is just buying views. So the marketing-wise, it's done in a very different way, and there's really little to no money on marketing. When it comes to this, MyMusic would not be possible without being part of the YouTube Originals program, and they funded content. We did not get a lot, but we are able to use the smart ways that all of us that have been doing this for a long time know how to make low-cost, very high-quality stuff and figure out how to do this. So, I mean, I can't disclose the exact budgets, but I mean, we're doing something like 159 different pieces of content over a 12-month period, including 40 hours of live content, and like we're having to do all of this under a very, very, very shoestring budget, and you got to just be very smart with how you structure your company to handle that. For us, I can talk about the main show that is a TV sitcom. And 6 episodes of a TV show is essentially what we made, that we break up and find different ways to use. We shot all of those like they were 2 separate feature films. We were able to condense it for production and saving money. Okay, we're just shooting during these periods of time for the biggest high production thing. We only need that soundstage for 2 months instead of 12 months because the show is that long. You know, those types of things. While then having a small studio space in our office to then have weekly content to make the social media experience really feel alive, because we do things weekly and we do things pre-shot. So you're having to be very smart with the way you allocate budget and how to do things on the cheap but still really high quality. I don't know how much more, I must have answered your question, but it's very low money. Traditional Hollywood would look at it and say, I don't even know how to make one episode, let alone doing the entire year's worth of content.
I just echoing all that. I think for us, it's not about like how much it costs per episode. It's more how much it costs per day of production and how many episodes you can get out of that one day of production. And that's what we've kind of been really strong at. We do 53 pages of scripted content per month as a show, and it's acted, it's written, and everybody's paid. So.
You know what? Let me try to answer the question here a little bit since I'm not on the hook. And you
Speak
guys,
louder.
And you guys feel free to disagree with me at any point. On the high end, the highest production budget that I know for a web series is $10 million. Anybody disagree with that?
You're talking about the video game one that's coming out in like 2 weeks?
Yeah.
Yes.
For Halo 4, $10 million. Okay, that's the highest. Okay? The lowest is somebody turning on their webcam for nothing. Okay? But in terms of something that you can do on a consistent basis, it's somewhere closer to the webcam model than it is the $10 million. And so if you're looking at a couple $100 an episode, a couple $1,000 an episode, that's a fair area to play in. Yes, no, maybe, guys?
We wouldn't be able to sustain if things were. I mean, MyMusic's different because it's like getting a TV show with the network. When it comes to the other productions we make, like we're spending. I can talk about Kids React a little bit. I mean, we spend maybe, if we're not counting our time and equipment that we already have on staff, we spend maybe $100 per 3 episodes, and that's mostly in granola bars and water and paying the talent a little something. So I mean, it's completely unsustainable independently at $1,000. Even at $1,000 a thing, if you're going to do it forever, and it depends how much your audience is. We could sustain off that at this point because we have 30 million views a month. But if we were back at 2-3 million views a month, that's your entire revenue. So like, you really got to be doing things for pennies. And I think it's exciting because you can do so much for so little, but at some point it's got to bend where they stop coming to you and saying, oh, well, you can do this for $100, I've seen you do it. And be like, well, this is completely different if you're now, bringing me into your system. There's not a lot of money in the web. It's going to get there. It's not there yet.
Help you out? Great. All right, Frank.
Thanks, Tim. It's a great panel, by the way. Thank you. And I have a question. I've been working partially as a distributor with Fun Little Movies for many years, distributing in weird little places like Sprint mobile phones. And just recently, I've been connected to some foreign TV and web companies. And for little bits of money, would you or some of the audience members license your stuff for foreign television or for foreign internet sites?
It wouldn't be for a little. We'd have to be paid pretty well, and they'd have to own absolutely nothing. Like, it couldn't be a situation where Spain now has the proprietary rights to do Kids React in Spain. They need to be literally just licensing the actual episodes with nothing else, so we could still go into that territory if that was something we're wanting to do. But we'd have to be paid a lot. We're not, for where we are, I think I can only speak for myself, and we're in a pretty good place right now. Like, we're not looking to just put our content all over the place for no money and just allow someone to have great content. I think if you're starting out, it's an interesting thing for sure, because you never know what could lead. If you're moderately successful and now you're getting your content in other places around the world, you never know what that might lead to. So I don't think it's a bad idea. I know for us, it would need to be paid pretty well.
Show me the deal. That's what I said, everybody.
I mean, yeah, in my case, I would say, and really in a lot of what these guys are doing, for instance, I know Furey of Solace, you could not cut it together into a TV show. Like, there's a lot of vlogs, and there's also traditionally narrative stuff, so, it would have to be on the internet, but also just what they were saying, that, it depends on the deal.
Yes.
Okay, this is a little bit of a general question, but if you have a series that has a small viewership, like just a few hundred, what is the best way to expand that viewership? And more specifically, you spoke of the importance of blogs. What is the best way to distinguish yourself when reaching out to blogs?
Before they go, I'm going to say one general thing about that. And I don't know your show, so this is general. Like, as a general question to us, it's a general response. Just because you made it doesn't mean it deserves to be a hit. Okay, just because you made it doesn't mean that it's good, right?
Depending on what you're making. If you're doing something really awesome and different and unique, there's opportunities to partner with somebody that maybe there's something really awesome that you're doing that some big YouTube person would love to be a part of. That's one way to very directly try to engage people. When it comes to blogs, again, what are you making? In terms of engaging the blogs, you've got to understand, especially point of first contact and you not being established, what is that blog? What do they actually do? Actually frequent the blog a little bit before you just randomly write them. We all have to copy paste to a degree when you're marketing to 1,000 different places, though I don't think it'd be 1,000 these days, but even if you are, but you still got to make sure that there's some level of personalization to when you're reaching out, a reason that you're giving them. Like, I saw that you posted this. This is what my show is about. It's like, sometimes I'll even now I still do a lot of marketing all on my own for these things. We recently did a Teens React to Gangnam Style, it's a huge video, and was looking up, well, who wrote articles about Gangnam Style across newspapers even? And then I was drafting emails about, hey, I saw your article and you mentioned this. I have a new take on it. Here's this. It's being as personal as you can in those blog outreaches and not hitting them with the wrong piece of content, because then they'll never trust you again. If you go to a blog that doesn't post this type of thing, and maybe one day they did. The flip side of growing audience, you have a malleable format that allows you to be topical. Topical, 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 topical. If you're starting out, even in a narrative show, you should be thinking, how do I do a Christmas thing? How do I do a thing about Harry Potter when the Harry Potter movie's coming out? When you're really starting out, you have to be reaching those places, because no one's looking for the content. They will never find you. But if you can be topical, that gives you extra avenues to try to find audience. But like Bernie said, it's got to be good. If it's a crappy Harry Potter thing, then all the Harry Potter blogs just are going to hate it. Or if you don't know anything about Harry Potter and you try to make it, that's a really bad idea online.
Or
and the trolls come.
You can get an expert like Angelique.
I was actually going to build off of what Benny was saying about researching the blogs and really knowing who their audience is, what they post. Do they post stuff similar? And make sure that you keep a database of that information. I've created multiple spreadsheets of information. I actually learned this when I was interning with Bernie. So but I create multiple databases. Like for instance, I did something with a convention that was very geeky, so I have a whole database of geek websites that now any other time I'm doing something, or if I have a client that needs something that is for that market, I already have something I can go to, so that I'm not completely starting from scratch. And what Benny said about, and I don't know if your series is complete or not, but finding someone to partner with is huge, especially if that someone has a large audience and is willing to tweet about it and talk about it. Because even that little buzz, if it's someone, I mean, for instance, if you have a YouTube celebrity that tweets about your show, you're going to get more views than if it's just just an actor that isn't in the space. Oh, also, adding on to that, I would highly suggest any of your actors, producers, directors, anybody involved in the series, be on social media and be helping promote that. Because A, it's going to give them credibility in the space, it's going to give you credibility and your show credibility in the space, and it will start that buzz talking, because you never know who's listening.
And I'd just say, if you're trying to sell your series as something that has an immersive social media experience, then no matter how much audience you have initially, find a way to demonstrate the engagement of the fans. And which is why I say, when you do that kind of fan interaction, if you can chronicle it after the fact using something like Storify, so it doesn't disappear into thin air, it helps.
And be sure that you adhere to cocktail party rules. Christopher.
Okay, so my question is, okay, hello. All right, my question is, there are constantly new social networks that are coming into place all the time, and I'm going to use one that I know of. It's a fairly new social network called Tout. And Tout is a social networking tool that allows you to go and take 15-second videos of whatever and post it to an audience, which I could see being beneficial for something like if you're trying to make a media experience or something to that extent. But let's say you go and you jump right into Tout, and you're having your characters making these videos, and there's 25 people there, and nobody gives a crap. What should somebody do when they're looking to get into some kind of a new social media experience, or these new networks that are constantly coming up? As far as how soon should they get into it, and how soon should they start devoting resources to it?
The reason why any of us go into any of these social media experiences really, one is for the experience of the story, obviously, but the other thing, which is very important, is the audience potential. I think one of the ones that kind of came and went the past couple of years was Daily Booth, and I thought when that was, during its peak, I'm like, this is going to be cool. It's going to be what Instagram is now, in a sense. And it just kind of went away. And I remember I did a show last year, and I was building a campaign or an experience on Daily Booth, and it would have been a waste of time. And so I think for Tout, I think if you could try it, if it doesn't work, then try something else. Maybe this doesn't need to be there.
Make sure you grab the names though. You need the names, grab them.
It's one of these things. You could roll the dice. I mean, I'm sure that early adopters of Twitter got a lot of followers over the course of time, but I was not an early adopter of Twitter, not because I didn't believe in it, but more of there's success. Once you're doing things and finding things working on other social networks, you don't necessarily need to be jumping into it until it's proven itself, because you have the audience already. If you have the audience already, you then can drive that audience where you need to drive that audience. Relevant, you're in that position. If you're not in that enviable position, it is a roll of the dice. You don't want to over diversify, and really something like Facebook, for example, if you're starting is big, and so is Twitter. If you're going to now devote time to something completely brand new that nobody uses, then it's much, much harder to get anyone to engage with your content when they know what Facebook is. Even YouTube, even going back a couple of years, we had some websites that we were still putting videos on other sites too, and then they wouldn't embed it if it wasn't YouTube, because they were just so used to embedding a YouTube video. And the same thing can be said about, I'm so used to becoming a Facebook fan of something, but what is this? I have to go and make an account now? It's for us, it's not something that we dive into until we see a real benefit, or something is so, Spotify was completely brand new when MyMusic had launched. I feel like that's something I would have jumped into because it was music related and was something different for what my show was. Other than that, if it's just some other thing that's new, I'm going to wait to see what happens.
I'll give you an example, actually. In our show, the evil kind of douchey guy Wickham has an OkCupid account. And it's not saying that our entire audience is an OkCupid, they have OkCupid accounts they can engage. It became this kind of like, it was just, the presence of that account existing was what drove the intrigue of the show, of that character. And I don't know if that works for something brand new like Tout. It's because that it exists there. It kind of fed to the fandom, and fans were talking to each other. It's like, can someone with an OkCupid account message Wickham on OkCupid to see what he says? So there's also that too. So I don't want to say that don't do them, and just saying that, pick your battles is, I think, the message here.
Thank God it wasn't a chat roulette account.
Is that an account?
I was just going to add on to that, and these two gentlemen are very correct in saying, if there isn't an audience there, then it may not be the best place to be. However, and if you are building an audience, I would say devote the time and resources exponentially. So maybe the most on Facebook, slightly less but still significant on Twitter, and then if you want to do something on these new niche sites, and if you want to drive people to that, do that through your Facebook and Twitter.
I would say whatever social media platform you're using, I mean, whatever the case, get to know the habits of your audience. If you're doing a show like we were doing that sort of targets adults, a lot of adults have jobs and can't be on Twitter during their job. And if you're really calling for your fans to literally interact with characters at prescribed times, you need to know when your fans are on the different accounts.
There you go. All right, another question. We do have time for a few more.
I was gonna say, all the pressure's on me to close the show now, huh? No one else wants to stand here? Okay. Actually, first of all, I'd just like to really express my gratitude to all the panel. I just really like to express my gratitude to all the panel for the information you shared, particularly with me. I'd like to identify myself as a civilian when it comes to social media, so this has all been novel and new information for me. I'm involved with a charitable effort, and knowing little or nothing about social media, the thoughts occurred to me that it might be something better incubated by an existing consultancy or company that sort of has the capacity to take this from your level and move with it, rather than from my level and go get Idiot's Guide to Social Media, and try and do it myself. Because it's not just like how fast can I grow my business, it's how fast can I really make a difference in people's lives. So my question to you is, what would you advise me? Are there existing entities that are looking for those sorts of things, for something that's really brand ready, where I can, and I listened very much to what you were saying, you gave me a lot of very good information, where I really can identify brands that would be able to plug into this and say, hey, if we got this from the very beginning and serialized, and if you can imagine like the Young at Heart chorus, I don't know if you're familiar with them, but it was a group of elderly people, and they learned to sing like Sonic Youth songs, and it actually turned into a documentary and was on YouTube and things like that. If you can imagine something similar, but being able to take it from the inception and instead serialize it, as they learn the songs, and instead of having it be 90 minutes of documentary dumped on you, to be able to participate as an audience in choosing the songs and watching people learn them and tweeting back and forth with the characters, etc. It seems to me as something that has that potential. I personally have no clue how I...
All right, any social media experts in the audience? Raise your hand and come get this guy. But Angelique, maybe you can take this one to start.
Well, obviously there are people who do this, and in fact there are boutique social media agencies and transmedia companies that are revolved around doing those types of projects and helping you build them from the ground up. It's just really on finding out what your budget is and what you're willing to spend before brands or sponsorships come in, and kind of figuring out how much are you willing to invest in this, just in case you don't get that sponsorship ability, because prices could range drastically depending on if you're going for a consultant, if you're going for a full-blown boutique industry, if you want someone who is really well-versed in the transmedia space. It can run the gambit, and I'm more happy to talk with you after if you want more personalized advice on that.
Benny?
Okay, reality also. Like reality, like very difficult. Like it's to start from scratch. There's companies out there that fund content, but can they ever get it seen? There's a lot of these consultancies and companies that are just going to take your money and they're going to buy everything. I say it all the time, but it's true. You're going to go in there and you're suddenly going to find yourself with 30,000 Facebook likes, and no one's actually there. And it's just the reality of things, and you need to do a lot of homework. And who are these people? Like, they're not all Angelique who has experience in this space. Like, there's people that say they do, and they have all these case studies that are built off of essentially fraud, but like fraud that isn't really, that there's loopholes as to why it's not fraud.
Carpetbaggers.
Yeah, so it's you got to be doing a lot of homework. I don't trust anybody when it comes to like, I'm going to take your show and get you success. Like, who are they? Unless they are like a company that, there's YouTube networks that are out there that sometimes are maybe funding content, but even then, what's their distribution plan? For something like Social Good, especially, you want to get it out there, you want to get it made, but then you want people to see it. Otherwise, what was the point? And so even if someone would fund your content, where's the distribution? How are they going to get it seen? It's Social Good. I'm very interested in it, but have no means of doing it either at this point. But like, you got to be careful.
I'm also going to say, we've been talking a lot about social media, but a lot of the stuff in this space, you really do need to be out there networking, talking to people, going to these new media events and these IAWTV events and other things, so that you can get FaceTime with people who might be interested. Like, for instance, go to the events that YouTube stars go to and see if you can get FaceTime and get them interested and authentically excited about your project, because they're going to be the ones who will promote it and hopefully work on it with you.
Hi there, my name's Hunter, and I want to thank all you guys for your answers today too. You've all been really generous with what you've given. And I wanted to bring up a platform I haven't heard spoken about yet, but that seems pretty important in the independent film world, and that's Vimeo. And it seems like a lot of my independent filmmaker friends who have their reels up there, they have a lot of really creative, interesting work going up on Vimeo, and it seems like they've decided to just write off the internet as a place to make money, but maybe it is a place to get their work in front of film festival directors, or to build their careers in independent film or network TV. And I guess I'm just curious about if your guys' opinion on that. And then my follow-up to that is there was a great article in Filmmaker magazine that was talking about the internet and stuff, and how, supply and demand, one of the big things that makes something valuable is scarcity. If there's only 10 of them in the world, they're more valuable. So I wonder if with specialized content, or is there some content that you in a way make scarce so that you're able to charge the super fans for it, or just that whole concept of scarcity?
Well, okay, when it comes to Vimeo, like, Vimeo does very specific things that sometimes are contest driven, and I'm sure that there's success models that come just like a film festival with Vimeo. If you're not on YouTube, you shouldn't even be making web content, period. That is just the way that it is. You're never going to find an audience like you can on YouTube. Even if you prefer Vimeo or prefer your own website, which could even be smart, you need to use YouTube as a marketing tool. You've got to be doing something with it. It's the way you're going to get an audience for yourself, because that's where everybody, at least right now, currently is. And YouTube can give you the same quality as Vimeo now. It used to not be that way. I remember how horrible YouTube compression was, and I feel like there's a waterfall effect for years now still, that everyone just looks at YouTube as this amateur place, when it is not an amateur place anymore at all. And yes, you can always, there's an element of it, but all in all, it's not there. Vimeo is not a place you'll ever get an audience. Vimeo is not a place you're going to build a brand for yourself.
I'm gonna argue with you here.
Okay, do it.
Okay. So for those of you not familiar with Vimeo, Vimeo is a high quality web video site.
So is YouTube.
Where a lot of cinematographers, directors, filmmakers post high quality footage, because there's a community of high quality footage freaks that hang out there and love Vimeo, because all of those like-minded people are there that they can't find on YouTube.
But you can find them on YouTube.
Not as easily as you can on
Well, it depends
Vimeo.
what you're trying to do. I think it depends what you're trying to do. If you want to just be inside of your cinematography network, that's one thing, and that may be valuable.
Yes. And
but most
so
people
that
are
is
online to make
valuable when
an
you are a
audience.
cinematographer that wants to get hired. That's very valuable when you are a director who cares about high quality work and you want to get hired. Or if you have a specific film or product that appeals to that audience that's on Vimeo that doesn't go to YouTube because they hate YouTube. And that's my only argument.
Well, it's also, we're not saying don't put it on Vimeo, also be on YouTube. There's no reason, if you're on Vimeo, why you shouldn't be on YouTube as well. Like, what is those views not going to get you?
And it also goes back to knowing the audience that you want. Because if you want to get views and to get something into a broader audience, you're going to go to YouTube. If you want to be in that niche community, then you're going to go to Vimeo. So it's really about knowing your audience.
That's why she's sitting in the middle.
Mediate.
All right, and I think that about wraps us up. And here's our host. So thank the panel for coming out.
Another round of applause for all these guys, IAWTV members. If you guys want to get involved and you're not a member of the IAWTV, talk to Tim, talk to any of these guys. We're doing outreach tonight. Get involved, join the IAWTV. There's lots of wonderful panels, workshops, events. Tim, do you want to mention anything about that?
Yeah, IAWTV.org. Go to the website, check it out, IAWTV.org. And also in January, we're going to be having the IAWTV Awards in Las Vegas at CES. We'd love to have you come. We'd also love to have you watch online if you can't make it to Vegas.
Definitely, they can watch on the YouTube page. Oh, and tweet them, yes, at IAWTV. All right, guys, so thank you so much for coming. Stick around. Who needs drinks? We've got lots of drinks, and we've got more food.